Hey everyone, today we are talking tier lists. And I wanted to make a tier list video that was focusing on the skill level that I'm currently at, which is kind of like platinum, diamond slash low conqueror. I currently have my AoE 4 world profile pulled up here, and as you can see, I've been conqueror since season 4, currently diamond 3 at the moment. But if you take a look, I have around 450 games played in ranked 1v1 this season. So I think I have a little bit of a knowledge base to be able to talk about some of the civilizations you're seeing and where I think they rank on the power rankings scale. Now I know that the pros have done tier list videos to death, but I wanted to do one that was more for the perspective of people who are a bit of a lower level. Because I think it does change some of where the civilizations land. I think the pros kind of don't think some things are strong or think some things are much stronger than they are, but only when you have a really high execution ceiling, which I know people at my level, including myself, do not have. So let's jump into this right away, and let's take a look at this tier list. So again, this is for ranked 1v1, skill level platinum to low conqueror. And let's start with the first civilization, which is going to be Japanese. Because my goodness, am I seeing a lot of Japanese on the ladder ever since the changes were made to their Dark Age. They're okay. I feel like if you're going with a civilization like the Malians, where early pressure is really detrimental to you, then Japanese can be quite strong. But even with those Dark Age changes, I'm not finding that they're too difficult to deal with. They certainly have the ability to pump out a ton of units, especially when those Yoroshiros go into the production buildings. Like, they can mass up extremely quickly and can overwhelm you. So they're not a bad civilization by any means. They also have the ability to go that fast castle, get those mounted samurai, very quickly pick up the relics. They can definitely go for 2TC, get a really great surrounding of farms around their stuff, and they can play the game from that position. But there's just something missing from being able to put them a little bit higher on this list, I would say. So B tier for Japanese is where we're going to land right there. Abbasid Dynasty, that's a D tier for me, I'm afraid. And it's too bad because it's a civilization that I love to play. But man, ever since the Pro Scout meta came in, it's just too slow. If you try to go Eco Wing, then you are going to be so far behind in terms of the amount of food that is being pumped into the other person's base. And you're not going to be able to contest the deer at all. So they're going to get all of the deer packs, meaning that you then have to further transition into farms after that as well for your food. So you're just eating up a ton of resources trying to build an economic lead when your opponent has researched one technology, built a couple of scouts, and has accomplished pretty much the exact same thing in a much, much more effective way. And even if you do want to contest the Pro Scouts, you can go military wing and you get 2 spears and 2 archers that don't really do anything to stop that from happening. So ever since the Pro Scouts came into play, the Abbasid have certainly fallen out of favor. I think they were absolutely S tier, and then some changes to the food have really dropped them down. So unfortunately, that's where they land. My personal favorite civilization, the English. I know a lot of people hate it. It's one that I used for a long, long time, but they're not very good right now. And again, they're too slow. They don't go the professional scouts route. And they also don't have any sort of economic advantage in feudal age and castle age. It's not really until imperial age that things kick in. But in this range, nobody's going to sit back and let you get to imperial. Like, people have the ability to rush, have the ability to mass up a decent force, and they're going to try and put a wrench in your plan. So just rushing straight imperial is not really an option. And as a result, that's kind of where the strength of the English currently lies, and it's just not quite there. Don't get me wrong, you can still win games with any of these civilizations, no matter where they are, especially in this rank. You know, execution is more important than the strength of the civilizations, obviously. But if we're just talking about pure power rankings, English has been lacking, to say the least, and it's one of the reasons why I have been inspired to try and check out some other civilizations. Speaking of which, other civilizations I'm currently playing, let's throw French in there. And I'm going to throw French in S tier. Not because of what I've seen other French players do to me, but because of what I've been able to do to people on this ladder using French. I think the Pro Scouts meta absolutely connects with everything that they're all about. You get a villager lead just by making villagers because they're faster. All of your ecotechs are discounted. You get early feudal knights, so you can put on this huge amount of pressure in age 2. I do, quick shout out to myself, I guess, made a French Pro Scouts guide. You can check that out because I do think that they are one of the strongest civilizations right now. And they're definitely something you need to be keeping an eye out for. I think they're extremely strong. What should we do next? You know what? I'm going to say Malian is B tier. I know it's a bit higher on some of the pro lists at the moment, but they're good at countering other pro scouts. But if they're not countering pro scouts, they're just kind of fine. They're like Japanese, where they can mass very significantly if you let them get rolling, if you let them cowboom, if you let them get their golds going. But I think you put on some early pressure to Malians and they just kind of start to fold and crumble. It's also extremely difficult to effectively micro this civilization. With the Donzos, with the javelin throwers, you're just over damaging units all the time. And people at this skill level just don't have the micro in order to be able to more effectively use the advantages that those military units have. So Malians is okay. It's nothing great, but yeah, I have been disappointed. I'm a Malian player myself, and I haven't been able to find that sweet spot of what I'm really looking for, what I'm really kind of connecting with the Malians when I'm not specifically countering pro scouts from someone like France or French, Rus, or Jussi's Legacy. You know what? Let's talk about this. Jussi's Legacy is the best civilization by far. The fact that they can pro scout so effectively, better than any other civilization. They research it faster because of the supervision. They get spears out much faster because of the supervision. They get scouts out much faster because of the supervision. But they are so incredibly flexible. And that's going to be something you're going to see as a pattern of these S-tier civs up here. Like, they just seem to be like, oh, and they can do that too? Really? Oh, interesting. Because Jussi can also not go pro scouts and can just rush the fastest castle of any civilization that there is. They have extremely strong horsemen with their upgrade. And then they have the ability to do really incredible eco things. They also have their monks, which can fight. So you can send like a horseman to guard a relic, and the monk will just beat the crap out of it, grab the relic, and walk home like nothing happened. They just have so many different tools. The pagodas, so much passive resources. All their different dynasties suddenly discounting their eco buildings and their farms. They're extremely strong. Very difficult to play, so you don't see a ton of them in this particular range, I would say. But when you run into even a semi-competent Jussi Legacy player, you're going to have a bad time. I've been trying to learn them. They're quite complicated. I don't have the skills with them just yet, but I can say, facing off against them on the other side, it's kind of like, man, what do I even do here? And I didn't even mention the Nest of Bees, which are by far the best siege weapon in the game by a significant margin. They're just crazy. And on a similar vein, I'm going to throw China up here, maybe behind French. They're not as good as Jussi's Legacy. No, they're in front of French. What am I saying? But they're still quite strong for many of the same reasons. They are just so defensive with the Barbican. They can so effectively build an eco lead in Song Dynasty. And before you know it, they're in Castle Age, having defended quite well, and they are again pumping those Nest of Bees out, and it's extremely hard to deal with. They make a blob of spears to guard those, and you're going to have a hard time pushing in, and you're going to need a pretty significant advantage in order to push through their army into their siege. They also build faster, same with Jussi, and so their keeps seem to go up like this all across the map. They can pop up outposts and get really great map control and vision and kind of understand what's going on. They are extremely strong. Let's flip onto the other side now and talk about the Ottomans. Ottomans, D tier. I don't see the Ottomans very often, and when I do see the Ottomans, I'm not scared, because the plan is to beat them down pretty early. They might be able to kind of put on a little bit of feudal pressure. The kind of old style of like the Metter with like massive Sipahi and archers and big feudal pressure seems to have gone by the wayside a little bit. They have a tendency to do the trade network landmark in order to get them up to castle faster. But I feel like you can just put a lot of pressure on them before they can get rolling. And I do like to play a bit of an aggressive play style. So anytime I see the Ottomans, I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm going to put some pressure. If they can get to Imperial Age and make 4 great bombards, you're going to lose. But don't let them get there. Don't let them get 7 military schools up and pumping a bunch of different stuff. Always forget that you don't want to build any cavalry against these guys. The Janissaries bonus damage versus horses is insane, but yeah, they're not scary, and I don't think you should be scared either in this particular skill range. Next up, Holy Roman Empire is also top tier for sure, because again, they're so flexible. I don't see a lot of feudal aggression from HRE in this level. I think it's really strong. People don't normally kind of choose to go with a lot of feudal pressure with this civilization, but their flexibility of being able to do that, but also being able to rush castle and also potentially be able to rush castle with the burger rush as well, which if you're not careful can still catch you out. It's a very strong civilization. It's difficult to stop them from getting all the relics and very quickly being able to either get up to Imperial or making an absolute mass of man-at-arms and Lance Connect. And at this particular level, microwing to kill the Lance Connect in a blob of man-at-arms is just more difficult than the pros with their pinpoint precision mouse skills are able to do. And so they're a really strong civ, and they're able to boom up with that Aachen Chapel as well. And they're pretty easy to play as well. I have a couple of wins with HRE, and they're not a civilization I play often at all. But they're definitely one of the stronger ones in this particular patch. What else have we got here? I think Mongols is an A-tier civ to me. And maybe you'll disagree, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on any of these choices. But Mongols, to me, just seem to be hard to deal with. They like to put a wrench in your plans. And if you're coming up against a Mongol player who plays Mongols frequently, they're a bit of a well-oiled machine in terms of tower rushes. They know how to put on the pressure. It's not necessarily as effective as a pro doing it, but they're certainly going to cause problems for you. They're going to push you off the gold. They're going to push you off the wood. And if you're not careful, you can get suffocated quite quickly. But then even if you are able to put that pressure off, it's then a case of kind of multitasking, because Mongols have a tendency to be played on maps where the trade is quite good. So that means that you're then defending against Keshiks, which, to share my personal opinion, are one of my least favorite units in the game. I always find that I'm running into fights that I think I should win against Keshiks, and I just get steamrolled with that lifesteal. But you do have to multitask, because you're also trying to raid to stop the trade, and you're trying to protect your base, and you're trying to avoid their raids with the Keshiks. They can mass up relatively quickly, and if you leave them unchecked, they get to castle very fast, and then their Kurultai is there healing up all their units, and it's in your base with the deer stones, and you're having a bad time. So they're definitely a civilization that I struggle with a little bit more than I think I should, but I think they're stronger in this particular league than maybe the pros give them credit for up higher, because of the multitasking that's required for that. Delhi. Is it crazy to put Delhi in B tier? I mean, they're definitely the top of B tier. Am I going to put them in the same area as Japanese and Malians? I think that's insane. I think Delhi's A tier. Their ability to capture the sacred sites, again, forcing a lot of multitasking fights. Elephants are still extremely strong in this patch. They're causing some problems for people who it's just very difficult to counter them. All of a sudden, they have a huge mass of things to deal with there. And if they can get their keeps up, all of a sudden they're pumping additional villagers and getting an eco lead on that front as well. They can gather the relics. I really enjoy playing Delhi. It's one of my kind of most played civilizations as well. I am not good at it. I think that the skill ceiling for Delhi is pretty high. You're constantly monitoring sacred sites. You've got all of your different monks going off in different directions. What are they called for Delhi? Not prelates, not monks, but either way, grabbing the relics and then boosting up the research and then putting them into the production buildings to speed up the research time of your castle upgrades for the units, and then also getting yourself a boost of military production. Anyways, they're really strong, and I think that they're pretty good. I would say that in this particular skill range, you don't see a lot of fast Imperial Delhi, which is a good thing, because I think that's when they're even stronger, if they can kind of find a timing and get up to that point. But yeah, they're definitely not B tier. That was a misnomer by me. Definitely A tier civilization, and they are quite strong. All right, it's time. I think that the Byzantines are the second best civilization, because the Byzantines also suffer from the same thing that Jushi does, which is like, oh, they can do that too? Oh, of course they can. They have cheaper farms that give them 2 resources, which is crazy. Their Grand Winery allows you to produce monks immediately in castle, which is wild. So they can hit castle and immediately start vacuuming up the relics across the map. They have some of the best spears in the game with the ability to negate damage. They have the ability to pick all of the most annoying counter units from all the different civilizations. So before you know it, you're up against like javelin throwers and camels and keshiks. And I know that you can't get those ones necessarily all in the same, but if you also have somebody who's taking advantage of the markets where they all of a sudden have royal knights as well, it just becomes crazy. And just having access to some of those incredible counter units gives them a lot of pressure. And then, of course, they have some of the best man-at-arms in the game with the Varangian Guards. The Cisterns allow them to be 1 TC, but have some of the strongest economy in the game. Yeah, they're pretty crazy. And if you let them go even just a little bit, they're nuts. Because then they have towers that have mangonel shots, of course, which are extremely oppressive and can safeguard a position extremely easily with just a single tower. Like, you cannot run units in there. They're just going to get absolutely blasted by those mangonel siege towers. They have the chirosiphons that are burning down your entire face if you're trying to be more eco-focused. Yeah, they have so many options. They're tough to deal with, and anytime I see a Byzantine main, I know it's going to be a hard-fought battle, and I'm going to have to try and get some damage in early, because otherwise they are just going to get up to that castle, and the snowball of units is very real at that point. Jeanne d'Arc is A tier, I think. Same thing as French, but just a little bit worse. It's like French with extra steps in many ways in terms of getting the pro scouts going. I really enjoy playing Jeanne d'Arc. I think the hero thing is really fun to use. Getting her to level up is kind of a mini game within the actual game itself is always really fun. Trying to keep her within range to get the experience, but not so much in danger that she's getting sniped out. Yeah, she's good, and it's nice because they do play a bit different than French, because you can transfer or transition into man-at-arms, moving into that castle age, which is kind of a strong timing. But because of the Pro Scouts meta, I think JD is doing some solid work for sure at that point. Man, another one in the S tier, Order of the Dragon, is crazy. And people at this skill level, including myself, do not understand how to take fights against this civilization. And it's wild, because you think you will win, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just lost my whole army, and they're all half health, and now I'm going to lose this game. So you really have to be careful about the fights you take with Order of the Dragon. With the Pro Scouts as well, they have so much food. Before, they would kind of run out of food because their villagers are gathering faster. They're running through it more quickly, but having that extra deer under the town center is just amazing. Order of the Dragon used to be, if you saw your deer pack early when you were scouting, you would immediately abandon sheep and go straight to the deer. And now it's like, no, the deer are coming home to us, so we don't have to go anywhere, which is pretty wild. And they are definitely super strong and can cause a lot of problems. They're a civilization that is definitely up there. Rus is pretty good. Yeah, Rus is pretty good. They are doing the same thing all the time, which is that Golden Gate double hunting cabin into castle, and horse archers for raiding and getting some knights going. But they're definitely the lowest part of A tier for me, I would have to say, because they seem to be. It seems to be that you can deal with them. They're going to get up to castle. They're going to be able to get a significant amount of deer in with the Pro Scouts, and that's going to be a strong timing for them. But I feel like they just don't have a certain something that will then allow them to transition that advantage into winning the game necessarily. It's not a very clear-cut path from that point forward to finishing you off in the game itself and getting the victory for themselves. So yeah, Rus is quite strong, but they're not too crazy, I would say. And then we got Ayyubids. Ayyubids are also pretty good. In the interest of keeping this tier list like a little bit more balanced, I think I'm going to put them in the top of B tier. They still have a tendency to kind of like go dervish and maybe have one or two desert raiders that are causing problems and then go very quickly up to castle. So, but I think fast castle does seem to be the strategy that they tend to favor the most. And so you're not necessarily confused about what you're coming up against. And you'll notice that some of the civilizations I have here in the top tiers, the reason why they're up there is because they're so flexible and the scouting is so important. And at this level, scouting is hit or miss, to say the least. So you don't necessarily know what you're up against, and it can be hard to plan as a result. Whereas the civilizations that are a bit lower in this tier list, you kind of understand what they're going to do before the game even starts most of the time. But yeah, Ayyubids, their camel lancers are very strong, but you know those are coming. You know they're going to be able to get a lot of relics, but you know, in a position where maybe you can get yourself an economic advantage with an additional TC, you can probably bowl over them pretty quickly. The one thing you do have to be careful of is their manganiques and those flaming balls of fire coming down and raining havoc on your buildings and your farms. If you get to the point where they're in your base and they're doing some massive eco damage with those siege weapons, you're definitely in trouble, and you probably made some mistakes to put yourself in that position in the first place. But yeah, let me just double check. So yeah, Ottoman's worst, Abbasid a step below. Yeah, English, very disappointing. Malians, I think there could be an argument that they should be higher, but for me, that's where I'm seeing them at the moment. Japanese, definitely seeing a ton of them on the ladder, but it's nothing too crazy. They definitely have the ability to mass, but I think this is a good spot for them. Ayyubids, you know what they're going to do, but they can do it well. Rus, not super scary, but kind of scary. JD, French with extra steps. Delhi here, pretty strong. Mongols, again, multitasking, causing problems. And then we have the kind of 6 main foes up here at the top that I think are very strong at the moment. And if you're coming up against them, then you're going to maybe have a tough game on your hands. Of course, it all depends upon your skill level and your opponent's skill level. And the matchup, and the map, and all these different things. But in terms of power rankings of a tier list, this is my opinion. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments. Let me know how you think I should have shaken things up here. But yeah, this is my tier list for the current end of Season 9. I know things are going to be shaken up completely with the DLC around the corner, but this is my choices for the Civilization ranking based on my 450 games in Season 9 so far. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. We'll be back with some more stuff soon. And yeah, thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.